and welcome to The Shit That Happens to Me, a podcast about life, love, and everything in between. I'm your host, Stacey Nye, psychologist, passionate storyteller, wife, mother, wannabe famous person. Now sit back and listen because I'm here to tell you about the shit that happens to me. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Shit That Happens to Me podcast. I want to say I've never seen that rundown clock before, so that was really cool. I liked it. So I have a very special guest with me today, Matt Fernandez. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Oh, I am doing okay. It's a Friday. It's afternoon. Let's go.
Yeah, yippee, Friday. So, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. You told me right before we started the recording that you have a show to do tonight. So
Yeah.
Maybe can you tell the listeners, A, how I know you, and B, what this show is that you have tonight?
Okay, so we got into contact because you posted on Facebook about I can't remember what page it was. It was probably one of the MFM pages about something, and then I responded. So
Yes.
I'm being incredibly vague and non-specific, but that's about as much as I can remember because like pandemic quarantine has just ruined my memory. So I have the attention span and memory of a girl right now. That being said, I am in a production of Pride and Prejudice right now with my local theater. Wow. I'm just playing a background soldier person, but like I wanted to get back to theater, and this was a role that I was offered, and I didn't have to go to a ton of rehearsals. I didn't have to stay late a lot of the nights. I was able to like skip a lot of rehearsals, didn't have to memorize any lines. So I'm like, okay, let's do it.
That's awesome. Easy.
I get to be on stage and I don't have to do anything. Cool. Let's go.
So you are a stage actor?
Yes. I've done like very minimal like film stuff, but like it's easy for me to do stage out here just because in Santa Clarita where I live, there's a lot of theater that goes on. Like there's, I think, over 10 theater companies out here, and they're always casting, they're always doing shows. Nice. So there's like some of like the very first shows that are coming back to live performances after pandemic has shut us all down. Yeah,
for sure. That's really cool. I was just talking with Katie Beth about my wannabe famous person spiel. And I always wanted to be an actress, but I'm not very good at it. I'm much better at being myself than being someone else. But I have total celeb envy and all of that kind of stuff. So that's really cool. Good for you. So what I'm really excited. The post that I made was I was looking for guests, and I had some specific things I was looking for. And one of the things I was looking for was like camp stories, camp counselor stories. And that's the thing that you responded to. You were like, I was a camp counselor, and I've got some stories. So I want to hear all about it.
So we're supposed to wear, because I'm also helping out with stage crew a little bit for this performance because I don't do a lot. The irony is that we're recording this episode about me being a camp counselor. I'm wearing one of my camp counselor shirts right now, and I didn't even realize it. I just pulled out something black, and it's like, I'm looking at it, I was like, oh, wait, this is one of my camp t-shirts.
So you've been a camp counselor. Have you been a camper too? Tell us all about camp.
So, I mean, not like summer camper. I went to like occasional like school sleepaway camps. Like I went to there was one camp up at Catalina Islands off the coast of California that was like for marine science that I did in 6th grade. There was one that was like space science I did in 5th grade, and like a bunch of different kids from the school all went for like 5 days. So I did those, but never like a summer camp thing. So the reason that I joined in college my freshman year. I did nothing my freshman year except for camp. Like I was just sitting in my room watching Breaking Bad all day. Then I figured out, you know what? I should probably do something with my time besides just sitting and watching Breaking Bad and going to class. So I was walking across campus. If you've ever been to UCLA, which is where I went, if you've been a student there, there's this area called Bruin Walk, which is like the main thoroughfare. And like everybody who has a flyer or wants you to do something or buy something or donate to something will stand there and just like shove stuff at you. So one of the things that was shoved at me was a flyer for this organization called Unicamp. And so I'm like, okay, this sounds cool. Let's see what it's about. I went to a couple meetings, and I joined up, and then I became a camp counselor. Technically I've been involved every year since 2013 into 2014, which was my freshman year of college. So I've done some, like I haven't gone up to camp every year. Like this year I didn't go up because work and stuff. And then last year was, of course, pandemic. But pretty much every other year since before that, I was up at camp at least for a week.
Yeah. And what kind of camp is it?
So Unicamp is it's a nonprofit camp intended for underserved youth from generally the LA area and sort of like just around Los Angeles, but occasionally like we'll branch out to other areas. Like there was one year we had some kids from Hawaii come, so that was really cool. But yeah, so we take these underserved kids who a lot of the time they're sponsored, or sometimes like with the Boys and Girls Club, they'll have to earn their way to go to camp. And we'll take them up for a week of camp and do different activities. And a lot of each of our specific weeks, we'll sometimes have a different social justice initiative and partner with a different organization. Like one of the organizations that I've partnered with a lot is, one of them is, there's three that I typically worked with in my weeks of camp. One is the Boys and Girls Clubs. Two, it's the Horace Mann School in Los Angeles. And then the third one is Village Nation, which is an organization that's dedicated to like Black empowerment through education. So we'll partner with those organizations and then just give the kids pretty much a week away from whatever stresses they have in their life.
Nice. What a cool camp. It sounds awesome. And so the kids go up there for like a week or more than a week or whatever they get sponsored for.
Sometimes like typically each session is a week, but sometimes the kids will be like, there's programs for the older campers, like high school age, where they do different things. Like there's one that's dedicated to like rock climbing and experience with that. We used to have a program that was just like hiking. We have another program that like they get community service hours by kind of maintaining the campsite. And so sometimes the older kids will be like, you know what, I don't want to go home. Can I stay for another week? And so they'll have to call the parents and like, hey, can I stay for another week? And the parents will be like, fine. So they have to like wash all their clothes and everything for another week, and then they just stay up there.
So I didn't go. I mean, I went to day camp. I was like, my parents like made me go to day camp. When I was young, I had separation anxiety. And so I went to day camp that was literally across the street from my house. And I cried. I cried at day camp. And the bully girl came up to me one day and said, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, "Because I want my mommy." I literally said that. I want my mommy. But yeah. And so, you know, I wasn't really super outdoorsy or athletic. So day camp was like not a good fit for me, but I enjoyed being a camp counselor. I did that a few times. And my kids, though, went to summer camp. They were privileged enough to be able to go to 8 weeks of summer camp for many, many years, but they won't tell me any stories that I can say on the podcast because, you know, they're trying to maintain those camp relationships. So, so I'm glad that you are willing to tell me some stories.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, because I guess, well, I have a question for you first.
Yeah.
So you sent me a picture. You sent me a few pictures of yourself, you know, that we use for social media. And one of the pictures is of you and your shirt says ninja on it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so that's actually kind of directly related to camp. So one of our camp philosophies at Unicamp is that when you go up the mountain, because we have a campsite up in the mountains of the San Bernardino Forest. So our philosophy is that when you go up the mountain, you can kind of be whoever you want to be, whether that's like going deeper into yourself or exploring a new side of your personality. Like you can be whoever you want to be. So we have camp names. Now, my camp name is Ninja because that is a nickname that I have had since 2009. And I earned that nickname actually at a different camp at ROTC boot camp in high school because I did ROTC for all 4 years of high school for community service and helped me get into college. So that was good. But yeah, so there's one activity we did at that ROTC camp called Pugil. And what that is you get these giant ear cleaner looking things that are supposed to like stand in as analogs for like rifles with a bayonet. And so what you're doing is you're smacking each other to try to like simulate who would win in a fight if you're close quarters with a bayonet. And I ended up killing quote unquote killing so many people with this because I do Taekwondo. I'm a martial artist. I like know how to use this thing, and no one really knew that. So they were all like, "Oh, I bet I could beat you." And I was just running through all these people. So they gave me I don't know who did it, but someone gave me the nickname Ninja, and it just stuck. So
that's an awesome nickname to have, Matt.
Yeah.
So you're the ninja camp counselor.
Yeah, and so whenever when it came time for camp, they're asking, "What do you want your camp name to be?" I was kicking around a few things, like, did I want to stay with that nickname, or do I want to do something new? And I just kind of stuck with it because, I mean, I'd had that nickname for like 4 years at that point. So
yeah, I just shudder to think of what my camp nickname would have been. But so that's really cool. So tell me you've got a few examples here on the sheet that you sent me. Tell me some of the hijinks. Like you can start with the campers or the counselors, whichever you like.
Let's see. Do you want something traumatic or something fun?
Well, only something traumatic if it doesn't end in blood or death or something like that.
Okay, I'll save the really traumatic one for the very end.
Okay.
But one of my favorite things to do as a camp counselor is we have a ghost story, or we have a couple of camp ghost stories that we tell up at Unicamp. And one of my favorites is called the Adam Crow story, and it's about this camper who's like an albino or whatever, and he like got really bullied. He got bullied very badly, and then eventually he ends up. And there's different versions of the story. The version I tell is that, and was told to me, is that he somehow kidnaps his bully camper, kills him, runs away into the forest, eventually commits suicide, comes back as a ghost, and then just starts killing bully kids throughout time and history. There's also another version where he kills the camper, runs away into the forest, and just lives as an old man hermit. He's still out there as an old man hermit. I personally think ghosts are scarier than old man hermits, so I tell the ghost version of the story. So my favorite way to scare kids and tell them is my co-counselor will usually have like one of those red light headlamps. And part of the story is that Adam Crow is an albino, so his white hair and his eyes are red. And then like just we'll say that like depending on how it catches the light, his eyes will like glow and you can see them out into the forest. So what we'll do is I'll be telling the story, and then my co-counselor will like sneak away and hide like either behind a tree or something. And then like at some point we'll turn on the red lamp, and eventually the kids will notice and they'll freak out and start screaming.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. And then sometimes there's a part where we keep some of our camp vehicles, and when you're walking at night, like we have flashlights. So sometimes the light will catch the tail light of the car and it'll flash red. And like counselors will tell me after I've told them the story, is like, yeah, I really wish you hadn't told me that story because I was walking to the lodge and we walked by the cars and it flashed red. And I literally freaked out and screamed. But my favorite experience telling this story to the kids was I'd come up to float a session, which is like just show up and help. You haven't trained, you haven't like really known anyone in this session, but you're just there to lend your services. So I was floating a week of camp, and that night I was with some of the older boys units, and then so they wanted a ghost story, so I told them Adam Crow. And then they're like, oh my God, that was freaky. Okay, that's fine. And then they went to bed. I found out in the next morning that one of the kids that I told it to was so scared that he was still up at 4 o'clock in the morning and wouldn't sleep. So they had to go up with him. And then in the morning, some of the boys are like, you need Jesus in your life. And I'm like, okay, okay. Well, I mean, you asked me to tell the story. And so the
Yeah.
girls found out that I told the story, and they're like, wait, can you tell us, please? Can you tell us? And I'm like, sure. But no, you have to tell us in the daytime because we don't want to be scared. So I told it to them, and they're like, well, that's not very scary. But I walked by their cabin that night, and like our cabins are open air cabins. So there's like a basic frame, but there's like no door, and there's like no screen or anything on the window. So it's an open air cabin. I
Yeah.
walked by their cabin, and the doors are all barricaded with the extra mattresses they had. And I'm like,
Oh my
what's
God.
wrong? It's like, we don't want Adam Crow to get us. And I'm like,
Right.
you said you weren't scared. I'm like, well, it's nighttime now. So that was like the proudest I've ever been.
Yeah.
There's another story we tell about, like, we call it the Shadow Man story. There's, I'm convinced, or I think I might have convinced myself that at one point I've seen Shadow Man, but Shadow Man is just kind of this vague, ghostly, shadowy figure that people have claimed to have seen throughout the past couple of years at camp. Kind of just like walks around the campsite or like stares at you or will peek into your cabin. Nothing technically too malicious. He's just kind of a spirit that's there. And so I eventually dragged my brother into doing this camp with me as a camp counselor. And then so I told them all like the Adam Crow story, and I told them the Shadow Man story, when like Shadow Man pretty much you just tell different random experiences that people have had with Shadow Man. And so my brother in his cabin, in order to make it scarier, did a summoning ritual or like a seance or whatever to summon the Shadow Man.
Yeah.
So he had them like sit in a circle and then hold hands and kind of like sway from side to side and chant some nonsense or whatever. I think he wrote an entire chant for it. And at one point he just kind of tensed up and fell over and started like convulsing and started like bubbling in the throat and like making all these weird noises, and his kids did not sleep for the rest of the night.
I just want to say, if there were ghost stories at my camp instead of softball, I would have enjoyed it much more. But so he was pretending that he was being possessed or something, right? That's so funny.
Possessed by the Shadow Man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love ghost stories. All that sounded like an episode of American Horror Story, by the way.
I mean, I have written a screenplay, a full length. I need to reformat it and everything. Like the formatting's wrong, but I wrote like 100-something page screenplay based on the Adam Crow story that I need to go back and fix, and then eventually, hopefully, get it made by somebody.
And send it to Brian Murphy for sure. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So those are some ways in which you've tormented your campers with ghost stories. How have the campers tormented you?
Okay. I'll build up. Let me build up to where I'm gonna go. But like campers and then like the parents, and then like the partner organizations sometimes can be a real pain because like a variety of different reasons. Like one of our partner organizations one year, we had been given this partner organization through someone with the city. So this was like a very big partnership. And so like the leadership of the organization, like our camp leaders or whatever, and then the people in like the main office for like organizing everything, they're bending over backwards to please this partner organization. And like from the start, they were not a good partner because they're used to glamping, so which is glamour camping.
Yeah.
So they're used to like the 5-star experience, and our camp is, like I said, it's their open air cabins. That's no doors and windows. It's very rustic. It's very one with nature. And so like the first thing they get off their bus is like, what's the Wi-Fi password? You don't have Wi-Fi. You don't have Wi-Fi? Oh, this week is gonna suck. And like, where's the doors? Where's the windows? You don't have lights? Where's the heating? I want air conditioning. Give me ice for my water. It's like, oh wow, this is not what we are used to providing. Like you didn't know what our camp was like. And so this entire week they're just bad mouthing us in front of the campers. And like these campers are like they were a rougher group of campers to begin with, just because life experiences, they didn't have reason to trust anybody, but we're trying to get through to them, and just seeing the counselors that they knew badmouth our camp and our organization made it like 7,000 times worse. Where just like
Yeah.
any headway that we might have made with these kids was just negated by these people are so stupid. What is this camp that they're running? This isn't a camp. This is a wilderness experience. I'm like, what did you expect
Wow.
from camp?
Yeah, really.
This isn't the Marriott in the woods. This is a campsite. Like, we're doing outdoor activities, guys. So
Did
sometimes
they
like
ever come around, those
no,
kids? No.
no,
Okay.
not I mean, some of them maybe did towards the end, but definitely like the partner org didn't. We never
Yeah.
partnered with them again. So it's not a, and it's just like the thing is like just seeing everybody like bend over backwards to please these people. It's like we wouldn't do this for any other organization. It's just because they have the money, and
Yeah.
clearly they're
Yeah.
used to experiences with money. So
Hmm.
that was, I think, the roughest part of that. But we got through it somehow, and never partnered with them again.
And you were going to say something about the parents?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple of weeks sometimes where we'll invite like parents, or like UCLA parents or staff members to come up to
Yeah.
our camp and just like experience it just as a thing that like an inner UCLA program.
Hmm.
Um, and for some, like we tell these parents rules like, please stay out of the bushes. There are rattlesnakes. Please don't eat in your cabin. There are bears. Please don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. And without fail, they do it every time. They just do the things you tell them not to do. Like this
Hmm.
one year in particular, we had a lot of snakes, a lot of rattlesnakes. And it's like, please, if you see a snake, don't go looking for it. It will bite you. And then we were walking down the trail one time, and then I see this parent poking at a bush, and it's like, hi, what are you doing? Oh, there's a snake in there. Like, what are you poking at the snake for? And they're like following, trying to find it. And it's like, do you want to get bitten? Because that's how you get bitten. And it's like an hour away to the next hospital. At
So
least.
you're talking, pretty calmly though about the fact that there's rattlesnakes everywhere. Like that would freak me out. Aren't you freaked out that there's rattlesnakes there
I mean, not
that can come into the cabin apparently because there's no doors or windows?
the snakes don't go into the cabins because like
Oh.
there's a staircase, so they can't really climb
Oh.
very well. They just typically stay off the trail. They don't really go on the trail because there's a lot of traffic. So they'll stay
Okay.
off the trail sometimes in like little like planter areas or in the woods. And
Yeah.
it's fairly rare to see them. Ironically, one time as counselors, we were up there doing our safety orientation. As soon as we like finished talking about all the snakes, we step out and there's a snake in front of the lodge. So it's like, hey, look, there's a snake. It's like, what did we just learn?
Oh
But
my
typically
God.
they're pretty rare, and usually when you do see them, they're kind of off in places in the campsite that aren't as populated. So someone might see them as we're walking by, and so we'll
Yeah.
just kind of we'll get the snakes, we'll like put them in a cooler, drive them off of the campsite, and release them. So,
Okay.
uh, and typically like they don't like the vibration, so they'll especially when there are more people up at camp, they'll typically be
Yeah.
harder to find.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean more so is the bear issue
The
that people are
bear.
more scared
Oh,
of bears. But it's like
okay.
we don't get grizzly bears in California, which is a huge misconception that people have. We have a grizzly bear on our flag, but grizzly bears have been extinct in California for decades, which
Uh-huh.
is highly ironic. But
Yeah, right.
occasionally we get black bears up in camp, and so I've run into black bears a couple times. The first time that I know I did run into a black bear was I was walking at night. I think it was the night of the dance or something. But I was walking, and one of the guys who runs camp has a black German Shepherd named Luke, and I thought Luke was just walking around at the campsite. I thought he was because there was a big black shape next to me, and I look over. I look back and keep walking, and then I look over again, and it's not Luke. It's just this black bear cub walking next to me, all chill. He looks at me and he just keeps walking, and I'm like, "Oh, that's not good at all."
How
That was the
how
first
big
time.
was this bear?
It was slightly bigger than like a Labrador size.
Uh-huh.
slightly bigger. So that's why that's I think how I got a little bit confused that it was Luke, because it was
Yeah.
would have been the size of Luke.
Right.
The second time I ran into a bear was we were
Wait. What did you do? What did you do? Did you run
I just kept
away? Did
walking.
you
I just kept
You just kept
walking. We just kept
walking?
walking, and we just eventually split off. Yeah, but
Were you
black
scared?
bears are no, not really, because black bears, like especially when they're not being attacked or being aggressive, they're really just like big dumb dogs. Like you can like the way we scare them away is you just get a bunch of pots and pans and clang them together, and then they'll
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
Um,
But the mom, like it's really
oh,
the mother bear you need to
the
be
mom is
afraid
what
of,
you have to
right?
worry about. Yeah,
Yeah.
the thing about having cubs is the cubs are harmless, but if there's a cub nearby, there's a mom nearby. So that's where we have to be very cautious with our campers, because like bear cub's not going to hurt a kid. Mama bear is
Yeah.
going to hurt the kid.
Yeah.
So we have to be very vigilant about scaring them off and not having like food in the cabins,
Right.
because that'll attract them. When my friend
Yeah.
told me a story one time, she was sleeping and she just woke up randomly in the middle of the night, and this bear just walked through their cabin, looked at everybody, and walked away. Like it went into the cabin and then left the cabin. One year, I had a girls' unit, and these girls were like very sassy. They thought they knew better than everybody, and we told them like, "Hey, don't bring food to the cabins, because the bear will smell them no matter how hard you try to hide it, and it will come into the cabin."
Right.
And so one night we'd found out that, like, we weren't at the cabins, we were doing an activity, but we'd found out that a bear had been sniffing around our cabin area, and we're like, "See, girls, like, I don't know, we told you not to do this because like evidently another cabin didn't listen to those same rules, because it's sniffing around our cabin area because someone brought food." And then it turns out it was our girls who like thought they knew better, and they were sniffing. "We're so sorry. Here, take all this candy we had stashed away." And it's like,
oh my God.
and to make them feel like guilty because they needed it, because like this could have been an issue. Like, you realize that, girls, if someone had gotten hurt, it would have been your fault. And then they just started bawling, and it's like, "Oh my God, we didn't know you were serious." It's like, why would we lie?
Right.
Like, we get
oh boy.
All. Like, we're in the woods, girls.
Yeah. I really like I love animals, right? But I think if I woke up and there was a bear standing over me, I'd be like obviously terrified. That would be the scariest thing to happen, like when you said bear cub, I was like, oh, but I probably don't want to see a bear cub up close.
No, I mean, just like there's the instant fear of like what a bear could do to you. It's like, I was very calm, just because I'm like, okay, I'm close to the lodge anyway. I don't see the mama around. This bear doesn't seem like it's very agitated. I'm probably fine. Yeah. So like, but the thing is, like, when the kids know that there's a bear around, they all get very scared because we keep telling them how dangerous it is to have bears. So when those incidents do happen, it's always a very tense thing, because we have to corral the kids away from the bear and make sure as much as possible that they don't notice. Because what'll happen is you get some of those dumbass kids who are like, "Oh, there's a bear, let me go fuck with it," and then they go run up to the bear. Like one time, we were doing like the camp dance, and then there's a big barn door at one side of the lodge that leads to the outside, and then that behind that barn door is where the little bear was walking. And so I didn't want them to go out and run into the bear, so I was closing the barn door. One of the kids noticed me closing it, looked out, saw the bear, tried to fight past me to get to the bear. So I had to, one, close this barn door, two, try to not make as much of a ruckus as possible, three, fight this kid off, and four,
oh my God,
hey, there's a bear, please take care of it. So, and then like again with the snakes thing too, it's like there was one year where like in the daylight there was a snake in one of those middle planters, and the kids were trying to go up to it. It's like, hey, no, you don't want to die. Like, and anti-venom for rattlesnakes cost, I think, like $16,000 a vial or something.
What?
It's ridiculous.
Do you have it in your infirmary?
Huh?
Do they have it at your infirmary?
No, we don't. We don't stock it. We would have to go get driven or airlifted to a hospital. We don't
Yeah,
have
that's not good.
that there, as far as I know. Because that stuff is extraordinarily expensive. It's like so like again, I did an article because I'm also a journalist. I did an article about snake bites at one point, and I believe the figure was 16,000 per vial, and they'll pump you with like 4 vials of that stuff just to be sure.
What? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
hospitals will like pump you with 4 vials of that shit. So
I think the solution is just stay away from rattlesnakes.
yeah, you would think
Right.
so. You would think so. But kids are
Yeah.
like, hey, there's a
Yeah.
deadly snake. I'm gonna go touch it. You're not Steve Irwin, kids.
Right. I have to tell you this wildlife experience I just had a couple of weeks ago. It's nothing like what you're describing, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So, I have these like 2 dogs, and my son and his fiance live here now, and they have a little dog that was my mother's dog. So they were away, and I was taking care of the dog. So I was up with this dog at 5 o'clock in the morning because she's old and she has to go outside a lot. So we go outside. It's a beautiful day. We go outside. She does her business. I bring her in, and I come inside the kitchen, and I kind of like see and feel something fly by right past my ear. And I was like, oh shit, I just let in like a huge moth, even though it's like daytime, right? I just let in this huge moth. Now I have to go like get rid of this moth. Only I look over at where it flew, and it's not a moth. It was a fucking bird. Somehow I let a bird into the house. Like I'm not one of those people who stands with the door open for an hour. I'm like in and out quick because I don't want any bugs. And now there's a bird flying around my house. And so and I have to say, like, we have like this little bird's nest by our window, and I'm like, oh, look at the bird. It's so cute. Look at the babies. Like, love it. Inside my house, no, thank you. I wasn't scared, but it made me so anxious. I didn't know what to do. So
it's gonna go shit everywhere. Of course you're gonna be anxious.
Well, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking like there's a wild animal in my house. Yeah. So and how do you corral a bird? So luckily, like all the doors upstairs were closed. It just so happened. So the bird had no place to go. So the back door, there's like a laundry area, and then the kitchen has a door, and then my husband's office has a door. So the bird's flying all around. Somehow I got the bird to fly into the laundry area. I closed that door. My husband's door is closed. I opened the back door, and the bird flew out. Like the whole thing probably only lasted 2 minutes. But I was so jacked up after that. Like with this, like, I mean, maybe birds are flying in the cabin all the time, but it was pretty scary.
There have been 1 or 2 occasions where people have found like birds. There was one year I remember where they found and this was like the first session that had come up for that year. But they'd found like a bird had been dead in a toilet for however long, and it just started in there. So that was fun for people to clean up. But there's bats occasionally up at camp.
No, can't do that.
There's some bats in the old house I lived in. Not so much out here, but I haven't seen a bat up at camp. But I don't need to. I used to see bats all the time. My big problem was spiders though, and mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Because I hate getting bit, but my blood is delicious. So I just get bit no matter how many layers I will wear or how much bug spray. I'm convinced that the dirt shield is a thing. There's like very little time to shower up at camp, and it's cold water anyway. So we're just to save time and water, we discourage people from showering as much as possible. By day 3, you don't even notice it. And I'm convinced that by using that dirt shield and smelling like the forest, I'm convinced that they don't bite you as much. Because as soon as I shower to go into the pool for pool rotation, that's when I start getting bitten. As soon as I smell fresher, it's when boom, that's food. So there's mosquitoes, but my big problem is also spiders, because I hate spiders. It just severely I watched too many nature documentaries as a kid. I know what spider venom can do to people and stuff, and just disgusting.
They're just creepy. They're just creepy.
I mean, I credit my fear of spiders to this one incident I had in the Philippines as a kid where I was sitting pooping in the bathroom and this giant tarantula just runs in and just runs
No.
around the floor, and I have to scream at my dad to come and get it out of there or kill it.
Oh
I
no.
blocked out the end of this. It ended, but I remember my dad just like stomping around the bathroom with me like crouched on top of the toilet,
Oh.
this tarantula running around in circles, and I don't know how it ended. I forgot how the end of that went. I don't know if he killed it or if it just ran away, but I
Oh
think that's
no.
part of why I have such a hate of spiders. But like my first year up there, um, I was in one cabin and I was looking onto I was getting ready to put stuff on my mattress, and there's just this big old spider crouched in the middle of the mattress. And then so I'm like, oh, nope, 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 nope. And then there was an opportunity to go into another cabin that the one cabin in camp that had like doors, windows, and lights. And I'm like, I would like to sleep in there, please. Thank you very much. But then I found out that that cabin actually has the most spiders of all of camp. So that night I was like bundled up in
Oh,
like, I
no.
literally like, I had all my sweatshirts on. I zipped up my sleeping bag all the way. I put like a beanie and then a hoodie and
Yeah.
tightened it closed. So literally the only space that was like exposed was my nostrils. And then I literally baked inside my sleeping bag that entire night. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'll take the spiders. And so like I went back to the outdoor cabin, and every year after that, I just kind of like spray bug spray all over my bunk. And I've never had a spider experience since. So
The bug spray is probably, assuming they're not poisonous spiders, the bug spray is probably worse for your health than the spiders. But
it is, but like
yeah.
my mental health.
Oh yeah, yeah.
My
They're
mental health.
my friend just moved to Arizona and posted a picture on Facebook of a tarantula in her garage. And I would leave. I would just leave if that happened to me.
Yeah.
I
No, 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 no.
oh, but I watched
I'll buy a
yeah.
different house.
Yeah. I would leave. There's yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway. So yeah, you didn't even write spiders down on your prep sheet. I didn't even know we were
No.
going to talk about spiders and
No.
bats. Oh, I'm terrified of bats. But so let's hear more about so some kids are not so nice.
Yeah, yeah.
We heard about the glamping kids, but there's other kinds of
Here's,
kids, huh?
here's my big story
Okay.
about this. So this was like the bad year. This is the year that almost made me quit. This was my third year of doing camp. So it was just after my junior year. And I had been doing like a mock trial camp at school that week before I was supposed to go up to Unicamp. So I'm already exhausted, but I find out in the middle of mock trial camp 2 days before I'm supposed to go up to Unicamp that the code that I'd been training with the entire year dropped. No explanation, no warning.
Oh.
He's gone. Like
Yeah.
he dropped. We don't know why, but he said he's not coming up. So I'm like, okay. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I guess if I need to, I can take care of a unit of kids by myself. I wouldn't. It's not ideal, but if I have to, I'll do it. But my leadership, they're like, don't worry, we'll try to find somebody to replace your co. You won't have to do this alone. So one of the floaters for that unit was originally only supposed to be there for 4 days. He ended up being my co, but he did leave after that 4 days because he wasn't supposed to be there the entire week. He was supposed to be doing a different job, but then they transitioned him into being my co and being a counselor for these kids. So he leaves 4 days in the middle of this incredibly stressful week to go to hard summer, which I don't begrudge him for. He needed that. That was his original plan, but whatever. But these kids that I was working with, they were from his school in San Pedro, I believe, in LA. And it was just a fucking nightmare of a storm with these kids. Like, these kids were not supposed to be in the same unit together at all. But what happened was that the original list of units and campers and pairings was eaten by the head counselor's computer. So on the drive up to camp, he had to remake all of the unit lists. And one of the kids in my unit originally, should not have been with the other kids in my unit because they were all friends, and that was a problem. Two,
Oh,
this kid also was such a problem, and he was not supposed to be going up to camp because of his behavioral issues, except he had a teacher who's like, no, it'll be good for him. I'll sponsor him. I'll pay for his entire camp for him to go. So at that
wow.
point, the school was like, all right, if you're paying for him, we'll let him go, but whatever. And so these kids are all together in a unit, and a lot of them come from gang backgrounds. A lot of them come from very violent homes, and they're not exposed to anything but this very violent and just difficult life. Like,
Yeah, of course.
specifically the kid who wasn't supposed to be up at camp. His siblings were all in gang life. I think his parents might have been in gang life as well. All of his friends
Hmm.
were in gang life. He had nothing but aspirations to be in gang life. It's like it's
Yeah.
what he knew, and
Right.
it was for him. It was his only path in life because he'd never been exposed to anything else. Like,
Yeah.
it's not his fault. It's as much as I really had trouble with this kid. It's like, it's not his fault that he was like this.
Sure.
There is some personal responsibility. Like, he could have at any point chosen to be better, but it's incredibly hard to do so when all your life is just pointing you in this one direction.
Yeah.
So him and his friends were all about that. Like, he was definitely the worst kid. One of his friends, like, kind of got that I was having a tough time and like eventually stopped being a little shithead long enough to kind of help me a little bit, especially after my co left.
Mm-hmm.
But just the entire week, they were just kind of like, I'd planned all this programming. And part of the reason why this was such a bad week is because I was still of the mindset that I loved this camp so much. And I had always had such good experiences that I wanted every single kid that I
Yeah.
went into this with to have that same experience. And I
Yeah.
didn't have the maturity yet as a camp counselor to realize that you can't force people to have fun. You can't
Right.
make them have that same great, wonderful experience. And kids' ways of showing enjoyment are different. Like, we had a very quiet
Yeah.
kid who was like, he was one of the good kids that we had, but like, he was having fun. He just wasn't super expressive. And it's like,
Right.
well, you having like, someone asked him, well, why aren't you having fun? He's like, I am having fun. It's like, well, why aren't you showing? He's like, this is how I show I have fun. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Right. Right.
so I didn't have that maturity yet, but I'd like made all these programs, and then the kids just were too cool to fucking do the fucking program. So they're like ruining everything I've done. They're just not cooperating, and it's just like draining on my mental. And again, I come from doing another camp that exactly the week before, so it's just 2 straight weeks of camp. And it all boiled to a head. Well, no, before this, there was one night where the camper who wasn't supposed to be there, he had done some stuff. I can't remember exactly what, but we were on the verge of sending him home. Like, that's an option for us if we think that a kid is either violent, is a threat, or breaks the rules. Send them home. Their parents have to pick them up at their own expense. And so we were on the verge of doing that. Like, it was an option. Like, the school was ready to send him home. They knew that he would have been a problem anyway, so they were already ready for that contingency. But again, I was not mature enough to realize that this kid, I'm not going to reach him necessarily in the way that I want to, and he's becoming a danger to the other kids. And that sending home is a viable option. And even though it is a last resort, that doesn't mean don't use it. It just means use it when you're out of options.
Yeah.
So we were ready to send him home. Some of the other older campers were like talking to him to try to get him to behave and stay because they wanted him to stay and enjoy it too. And so we decided to let him stay. Mistake.
Oh.
Because there was one of our kids who also shouldn't have been in our unit because he was a little bit younger than everybody else, but we had nowhere to put him. So for numerous reasons, I think they put him in my unit. He didn't go to the same school as the other kids. So the youth, plus not knowing them before, made him a bit of an outsider within the group. And he was a good kid. He was really nice, but he was an easy target. At one point, one of the other kids in the unit stole one of his belongings. And this little boy heard someone, and then the camper who wasn't supposed to be there talking about it. And there's like, oh, so you stole this thing? I was like, yeah, I threw it out there and I buried it. And so the little boy came and told me, and I'm like, okay, I'll talk to him about it. So I went and talked to the kid who wasn't supposed to be there. His camp name was TPud. I'm just going to call him TPud from now on. That was his camp name, named after Tyler Puddy, who's his favorite skateboarder. So TPud, I go up to him, he's like, hey, TPud, I overheard that you know something about where his thing went. Would you tell me about that? And he's like, I didn't do it. I'm like, I know you didn't do it. I know you didn't do it. I just heard that you might have known who did it or saw something about it. He's like, I didn't fucking do it. What are you always accusing me? I'm like, I'm not accusing you. And he's like, oh, I know it is. It's because I'm Mexican and you think we did good because the thing was apparently buried. And I'm like, that kind of just broke me. It's like, I know you're not accusing me of racism right now. I know you're not doing that. And I couldn't handle it. I was alone at that point. My co had already left. So I told Elship, like, hey, I can't deal with this right now. Can you please deal with them? And so Elship comes in and they deal with him while I just take like 5 minutes just to not lose my sanity. And these were the kids who they made me cry at some point. Like I was so drained and so frustrated. And then like when I did, like they freaked out. They freaked the fuck out. They're like, oh shit, you broke him. No. Let's leave him alone for a little bit. But then the next day it was right back to normal. But so at one point I overheard TPud mumbling to one of his friends. Like he was mad about this incident and he thought that someone had ratted him out. So he's like, oh man, I'm gonna get him tonight. Like when he's sleeping, he better sleep with one eye open.
Oh, and I'm like,
no. Now you are a threat to one of my other campers. I am not tolerating this shit. So then I told Elship, like, we have to get him out of the kid out of this unit because now there is a threat to his safety. So we moved the kid to another unit. Teapot had to sit out for all the other activities. And then just for the rest of the night, I could feel him like stink eyeing me and just like, I've getting very, very bad vibes from this kid. And this is a kid, very entrenched in gang life, had a little bit of history of violence from what I understood. Now, earlier during that day, another one of my campers had accidentally broken a pane of glass. Like there is one little tiny bit of glass in each cabin that's like to like vent out the bathrooms. It had accidentally broken. It's no one's fault, but there was broken glass in my unit. Now, I had asked the people the older campers in that program up at camp that maintains the campsite, hey, can you get the glass out of my unit? Please, thank you. So they come up to me later that night. And they're like, hey, Ninja, you're the problem with the broken glass, right? I'm like, yeah. Like, is it okay if we like leave the glass there for tonight? Like, your kids won't do anything, will they? And I'm like, my mind instantly just goes to the worst case scenario. The fact that all this had been going down in the same day, the fact that TPud has been like looking for someone to take his frustration out on, and I am that target at this point because he's been dead eyeing me the entire night. He knew that I knew it, so my mind goes to the worst possible scenario, and I'm like, please remove the glass. I'd like to wake up in the morning. And then they're like, oh, you're that unit. I'm like, I'm that unit. Please get the glass out of there. Like, yeah, we'll get that out of there right now. So that is the year that I'm thoroughly convinced that Teapot wanted to maim me with something that night. But like, I think his attention span was a little bit too short for that. But at the end of the camp, like we got through it. We drove back to UCLA, and just for safety and accountability purposes, like we don't let the kids off the bus until their parent comes to collect them. And so Teapot had been on this bus for a long time because his parents hadn't come to get him yet. And so he's getting annoyed and he wants to get off this bus right now. He stands up and like, I'm getting off the bus. I'm like, no, you're not allowed to get off the bus. You have to wait for your parents. He's like, no, I'm getting off right now. And me and my friend Lemonade is his camp name. We kind of stand up and like, if you want to get off the bus right now, you're going to have to push through the both of us. And he just stares at us. And he's a husky kid, a big kid. He's got a lot of bulk. But the two of us there, he just sits back down and starts grumbling to himself. The entire camp knew about Teapud because he's not a very quiet boy. And just the stories of everything that he'd done throughout the week were just, I told people at our counselor campfires that like, I need help, please, guys. Lemonade had also had a little bit of like experience dealing with him as well throughout the week. But like me and Lemonade are going to the bathroom after everyone's gone. We're walking through the streets and he just kind of like, I hate to say it, but Teapot's one of those kids where you'll see him on the news one day. He's either going to be on there for getting shot or shooting somebody.
Yeah.
And like,
Oh,
I
poor
hate to say
kid.
it, but
Yeah.
it's like that's the future that he's choosing. And it's so sad because like a lot of the
I mean,
kids that we deal with are they come from really rough backgrounds. A lot of the kids we've dealt with before come from foster homes or from just gang violence, and they're rough around the edges, but at the end of the day, they're still really good kids. It's like,
yeah.
like the problems that they give us are nothing compared to the lives that they live. And like they don't have any reason to trust us. We're up there for a week trying to just like, hey, be happy for a week, and like we
Right.
want to help them, and like we're not trying to fix them is the thing, and that's a problem that some counselors don't understand is that you're not there to fix the kid. You're not going to
Yeah.
fix them. That's not our goal.
Right.
You're just there to give them an escape. You're there to be a resource to them. You're there to be someone to listen and to help them have a good time. But it's like, even with the problems that they give us, like I'm surprised they turn out as good as they do given the shit that they have to wade through in life.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Well, so yeah, I mean, that's really if you felt like unsafe with your campers, I can't even imagine like, you know, that's way more responsibility than any counselor should be dealing with there. But so
it's the
you also
accidents that happen.
yeah, what was that?
It's just like the freak accidents that like
Oh
all
yeah,
these situations come together in a way that like
sure.
you don't prepare for and no one can prepare
Yeah.
for.
So now some of the counselors though weren't prepared or weren't as good as you were or weren't as conscientious as you are.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I have two stories to share about this. The first one of my counselors that because I was L-ship at one point, so I was leading a session with a couple of with some co's. But this one guy, like I'd had bad feelings about him throughout the week. Not throughout the training, actually, like all of training, like the first day, because I came into the session late as an L-ship because the session that I was originally running couldn't find funding, so we had to cancel that. So they moved me into this session. And so my very first day as L-ship, like I asked him about his sweatshirt because he had a sweatshirt that said Coke all over, like Coca-Cola. And it's like, oh, do you like drinking Coke? It's like, no, I like the drug. And I'm like,
What?
what? Did you really fucking just say that to me? Like, I'm your L-ship. Like, we're not supposed to be talking about this stuff in a camp setting. And then I told, like, I wasn't like the head counselor. I was like, or I wasn't the session program director because like in the hierarchy of Unicamp, there's like, for each session, there's the session program director, then there's the head counselors, then there's all the other counselors. So I was a head counselor, wasn't session program director. And our session program director was a nice guy, but I was not a fan of how he led camp. I don't think he was effective at all. So I essentially had to run camp the way he couldn't do it. But I told him about this and he's like, no, there's no way he said that. He was probably joking with you. It's like, there's no way. I don't think that he would say that. And it's like, he fucking said it to my face. You idiot. And like, so that was already sign number one that he was going to be a problem. And so first day of camp, we were up there and this guy, the trouble counselor walks up to me and he's like, hey, Ninja. Yeah. I was like, I know we're not supposed to like love your session. We're supposed to love our session, but don't love your session. Yeah. And like, we're not supposed to do anything with the campers. Yeah.
What?
And at that point, I'm like, I'm going to pretend you didn't fucking ask me that question right now. Just just it's the first day. And he's also like, when I hook up with a camper? Like, what the fuck?
This guy.
I to this day, I can't comprehend what would compel him to, one, ask me that, and two, like even think about it. Yeah. So, and then he did some stuff later during the week that's just like, we had to blacklist him. There was like kids potentially, like he let kids have a situation they were potentially either making out or having sex or something. I think like there's a whole just bullshit around not having sex. I mean, like, I think he left the campers alone and they started making out, which they weren't allowed to do.
Yeah.
Is what happened. So did not like that.
No.
So if you're editing, maybe edit the part for having sex because they didn't.
Yeah.
But like he left them alone, and like it was just this whole judgment. It's like, where we've told you all these things throughout camp, like training.
Yeah. Right.
And you're just throwing it all out the window. And not only that, but you're putting our campers in situations that are compromising and that reflect badly on us.
Yeah, of
because
course.
of your poor judgment.
Right.
And so just we blacklisted him. At one point, we just took him away from like campers. Like, you're sitting where no camper can see you.
Yeah.
Because you are a horrible influence. And you are just causing so much trouble for us. And then the other really bad, I mean, there's a couple other bad counselors. Like I said before, this is more of a minor thing, but like, stop that. Hold on. But like, I'm supposed to clock out of work now because it's Friday and I forget to clock out.
Oh yeah.
But so sometimes some of the L ship, like they're not as good at training people as some other people, or as like I am, but sometimes they'll forget to tell people like, you're not here to save them. Don't have that savior complex. And that ruins the week for both the campers and the counselors, because the counselors are going in with that expectation that you're going to save this kid. And when they don't, they feel like they failed. And then the kid is going to this with people who are trying to save them when that's not what they want or what they need.
Yeah, right.
So that, like,
interesting.
That like one person's inability to teach ruins a whole generation of counselors and creates like potential situations where counselors who normally would have been great don't want to come back because they think they failed. The other really, really bad counselor that I experienced was I was hosting like a pre-party for a bunch of camp people. I think we had just had like our big retreat and we were like blowing off steam and are gonna go to like a big restaurant or whatever. And my friend asks me if she's in my session. She's like, "Hey, he's not in our session, but my old co-Flash is in town, and I was wondering if he could come to the pre-party." And I'm like, "Oh, why the fuck did you ask me that?" And like, I've known Flash before. I hate him, but like my friend, like I knew of him. She wanted him to come. Like, I thought it'd be fine. So I'm like, okay, fine, he can come. And for not to disparage Marines, but this guy is like absolutely 100% Marine. Like every bad stereotype you could think of a Marine, it's him. Just all the bad things that people ever say about a Marine, it's this guy. So he comes up to me during the party, just completely fucked, just blasted, had way too much alcohol. And he goes up to me and he's like, "Hey, Ninja, thanks for a good party, man." I'm like, "Yeah, you're welcome." He's like, "Yeah, I'm not doing camp this year, so you're gonna have to be the new Filipino camp scumbag." And I'm like,
"What,
dude? It gets fucking worse, Stacey." So I'm like, "Okay, dude, cool." And I'm like, just trying to make small talk with him because I'm alone on this balcony with this dude. Like, I was like, "So I heard you're actually shipping off to deploy soon. Like, thank you for your service." Like, yeah, I'm going. It's like, "Yeah, good for you, dude. I hope you stay safe." It's like, between you and me, the only reason that I'm going is so I can kill. And if I need to re-say this take because it's offensive, let me know, because this is.
You probably shouldn't say it then.
So
I understand it's what he said. Then, yeah, right.
I don't know how to express it.
Yeah,
so I can go
doesn't sound good.
And then a slur for people for the Middle East.
Yeah,
it's like I'm between you and me. I'm just going there so I can go kill some fucking slur, and I'm like,
yeah. Oh my god.
And I leave, and like, I've never spoken to this guy again. I don't think I follow him on social media anymore. And it's like, I will never say anything good about it. And like, he has friends who are my friends that are still in camp, and I will trash talk this guy. And they're like, "He's our friend, right?" I don't give a fuck. He's a bad human being who should never be allowed around kids. And the thing is, he looks good on paper.
Yeah.
And then like every year that they let him back, it's like, they hope that he can be better. And it's like, I've been talking to people about it, and it's like,
you have to
hoping he'll be good because he's good on paper. but he's not good inside.
No.
He's demonstrated time and time again that he's a bad person. And it's like, yes, we're kind of desperate for volunteers at some
I
point.
know.
All volunteer organization. And like, we need people that on paper you can look up to, but like this guy, if someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Yeah, right.
Everybody who he is. And it's like,
Oh
I've
boy.
never wanted to speak. Oh my God, I can't believe they let him in for as long as they did.
That's a shame. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, it must be hard to get people to work, but you need to carefully vet your camp counselors. So, yeah.
It's like he'd never do anything that we've seen bad around the kids. Like, he's controlled, but it's like, you don't want, like, what if he slipped up and said something?
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes like you just say things without thinking. Like, you just instantly react to something, and it's just like, I just don't know what he talked to the kids about in their cabin. Like, what if he's writing some of that racist bullshit to them?
Right.
Telling them stories about the things he's done overseas, because apparently
those sound like horror stories.
Yeah, and so it's like, I don't know why this guy was ever allowed to be around them for so long.
Yeah. Oh boy.
But I have a fun story about camp. If it's a little unfortunate for me, but it's funny to tell.
Okay, the last one. Then we have to stop because we've been talking a long time.
Okay, so we have, one of the things that I usually did up at camp was I was when I wasn't being a counselor, I was a specialist when I was running this vertical climbing obstacle course we called the Alpine Tower, which my nickname for it is the 55 feet of fun. So it's 55 feet, and there's different like challenge obstacles on it. You can like climb it normally, or there's like a thing with hanging logs. There's like some rope ladders. There's a bunch of different obstacles, and like over the years of doing camp, I'd pretty much climbed every aspect of the Alpine Tower, except there's kind of this like free climb, big old white rope right down the middle of it. And that's the only thing I hadn't done. And this was a year that I wasn't sure if I'd come back the next year. I ended up coming back the next year, but like this was potentially going to be my last time up at camp. And I'm like, you know what? This is the last thing I haven't done. Let me finish it. So strap in. And like, the thing is, like, I tried it one day and I couldn't do it. But then I saw like one of my friends climb it, like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Really easy climbing it. But then again, like, he climbs as a sport and for enjoyment and for exercise. So of course he's able to do it.
Yeah.
Now, I hadn't really exercised in a very long time, and I had never exercised as climbing. Like, my exercise is martial arts, and you'd use very different muscle groups for climbing and for martial arts. So the first time I tried it, couldn't do it. Next day, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it today. I don't care how long it takes me. I don't care how tired I am. I'm going to do this. So it takes me a while, but I start climbing, and I like worm my way up this rope. And I eventually do it. And this rope only goes about halfway up the tower. And then there's kind of like this little triangle thing of logs. Because it's kind of like a TP-ish pyramid formation. So there's this like outer triangle of logs. And I climb up to one of the logs, and I lay on it because I'm so damn tired, because it took it out of me. And I'm just laying there trying to catch my breath, and the world starts swimming. And then the black starts fading in. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I'm coming down now. I yelled down to my co, who was belaying me. I'm like, oh, I'm coming down now. And our command to come down is descending.
Yeah.
And so like, co, descend. And then I pass out.
Oh my God.
And so I'm trying to come down, but my legs had been hooked around because I could feel myself like starting to fall. So before I lost consciousness, I'd hooked my legs around the log.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but I'm locking my legs the way I did right now underneath my desk.
Yeah.
I hooked, and so I'm like just kind of hanging there, like, but just hooked onto my legs and held up by the rope. And so my co is like, "What do I do? He passed out." And they're like, just lower him down very slowly. And like for a minute, they couldn't lower me down because I was still hooked with my legs, and eventually my legs dropped. And so they started lowering me down. And then I woke up like halfway down from
oh my God,
like a quarter way down the tower. So like maybe 15 feet from the bottom. And I'm like, what happened?
Right.
My friend, my Crescendo, he's like, you passed out, Cole. Don't ever scare me like that again. And so
Wow.
I'm the only person to ever pass out climbing the Alpine Tower, but I have completed every obstacle on the 55 feet of fun. So
I can't even imagine like waking up halfway down. Like, how did I get here? You know, because the last thing you knew, you were up on top. Yeah.
I was very confused. I'm like, what is, I can't, why am I feeling weightless? And it's like, oh, there's ropes. Oh, Alpine. Oh,
boy. That sounds like 55 feet of torture to me, but. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I really loved hearing your stories, even the scary ones or the ones that weren't so nice. But yeah, that was really great. I appreciate you taking the time.
Outweigh the bad experiences, but the
absolutely
bad for better stories.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So good luck tonight in your rehearsal, and good luck with the show. And I know you've got more stories to tell about some other interesting things, so maybe we'll have you back on, okay?
Oh, for sure. I'd be happy to do it.
Okay. Well, you have a good night and stay well, okay?
Of course. Thank you, Stacey.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.